Hello, it's John Gonzalez from Dizziness, Balance and Concussion Centre, and this blog's going to look at what we can do when we're feeling dizzy and some things to try to say help us through that period when we're not feeling so good. As ever, there's a disclaimer. The guide's been put together with the best intentions. It's using information that was relevant today. So again, if you're watching it in the future, that may have changed. Attitudes, research may have changed, things like this. And as always, if in doubt, go and see somebody. Please don't just rely upon a blog on the internet there. So the first thing to do, certainly if it's your first time feeling dizzy, and even subsequent ones, because things can change, is to make sure that we rule out serious pathology. The quick ones to really try and rule out and serious ones are stroke, so we're looking for the FAST acronym, any facial weakness, able to smile, asymmetry, things like this. Arm weakness, can you raise your arms above your head or ask somebody else to do it. Speech problems, can people speak clearly, or equally can they understand what's being said to them, or are they very confused? If you get any of these, call 999. Get some emergency help. It says 911 in North America, but get some emergency help, because the quicker you can get on top of it, the better. So we should be really looking out for that and ruling that out. Other symptoms to look out for, one big one is a thunderclap headache. That can come on with dizziness and things and nausea. And that's a headache which will come on suddenly, and it's a lot of people say it's the worst headache I've ever had, and it's there straight away. It doesn't build, it's boom, it's on like a thunderclap, and you've got a severe headache. Take that seriously. It needs to be looked at, needs to be checked out. What can happen is over the course of about an hour or so is that the headache can get better. So a lot of people think, oh no, I'm fine now. If it's come on like that, it can be a warning sign. Go and get it looked at. Obviously, we've got to be careful with things like head trauma, making sure there's nothing else happening there. Again, get checked out if in doubt. Pins and needles numbness not usually associated with vestibular issues, balance issues. So again, just needs to be looked out. They might not be, thankfully for all these, they might not be serious, but we just need to make sure. Equally, it's not a comprehensive list. If there's anything else that feels off, or you look at something that feels off, get them checked out. It's better to be safe than sorry. So go to the emergency room, the accident and emergency, or your doctors, local walk-in centres, things like this. Get looked at in a timely fashion to rule out any serious pathology. Thankfully, a lot of them will just be ruled out quickly, and then we can deal with the dizziness and things afterwards. But as I say, better to be safe than sorry. So what happens when we get dizzy is what can we do about it initially? Now, the obvious one is to try and stop the stimulus and trigger. So some people will find that visual things will make them dizzy, some find it's movement, some find it's maybe kind of linked to migraines or dietary or dehydration or stress and things like this. Easier said than done for some people. Some people still don't know what the triggers are, so trying to find those triggers, and certainly if it's the first time, you might not fully know why, but that's the best thing. Try and stop or get away from the stimulation or the triggers. Let things settle down, and then we can deal with things there afterwards. Medications, certainly for some causes of dizziness, they can help to get people over different bouts and things like this. Normally that's more chronic problems. For people who've just experienced a few episodes of dizziness and things like this, some doctors will give you medication to help it. What it does is it basically suppresses the vestibular system. It also works on the brain and the brain neurotransmitters and things like this to dampen it all down. It can help with the symptoms in the short term. It's no cure, unfortunately, and actually can lead to the vestibular system becoming slightly more impaired if used in long term. So we've got to be careful with these things, unfortunately. As I say, they can help in certain conditions. For those conditions, do seek medical help and have a good chat with your doctor. But if it's all of a sudden you've just had a couple of episodes of dizziness, we need to try and ideally find what's the underlying cause, rather than just thinking there's a magic pill out there to cure us. Other more practical things to try, certainly in the short term, controlled breathing, and we'll talk a lot more about that, and relaxation techniques. Again, it's not going to cure everything, but dizziness is always made worse if we are stressed or if we're not relaxed, things like this. But we'll talk about that in a little while. Longer term things, we're looking at vestibular rehabilitation, getting on top of what's happening there, or getting other things to compensate, things like this. Sometimes for some of the chronic conditions, support groups, talking to people who are going through a similar thing, picking up different tips and advice and things like this, it can be really useful. So support groups can be very good. Dietary changes, some people find these can help quite a lot, certainly again with more chronic problems. Salt intake, things like this, caffeine, can, if we cut that down and things like that. But again, that's more chronic. But again, support groups, support websites, things like this will give a lot more advice or more detailed advice on that. Equally, you can contact myself and I can help you with that. And then lifestyle planning, stress reduction. Again, it comes back to being relaxed more so and less anxious, which is very difficult when the world is spinning or when you feel unbalanced. So it's people think, oh, I'll just become less stressed and things like this, or just don't worry about it. It's very easy for other people to say, but if the world is spinning, or I say you feel unbalanced and things, it's actually very hard to put into practice. But thankfully, with practice, we can do that. Dizziness is stressful. Again, you lose control. You don't know what's happening. The world's spinning around potentially in front of your eyes, or you just feel as though you're going to fall over, or you feel sick, you feel nauseous. All these different things. It creates stress in the body. And the body will respond just as it has done for thousands of years now, by a fight or flight response. Do we stick around and things like this, or do we get away? Whatever happens with that, your system is increased and is on heightened alert. So we breathe faster, the heart rate's increased, things like this, and blood's pumping to the muscles more. What this has all shown is that it makes the dizziness worse. We're less likely to cope well with it if we are dizzy. It's not to say that we cope well when we're relaxed, or it's a nice sensation. It's not, but we can cope and maybe function a bit better. So stress just makes it all significantly worse. And that can actually be seen in people who don't have dizziness, where there's an event that's happened and it can make you physically vomit if you've had an accident or you've seen something distressing or had some bad news, things like this. It can make you feel sick, it can make you feel dizzy, as in cases it can make people vomit. So this applies to everybody. It's just that if you are dizzy or you suffer from dizziness, it will make the dizziness particularly worse. And that's what it says in the last one there. So ideally we don't want anything else making a bad situation worse, and that's what we want to deal with and get on top of. It just goes through it quite quickly. It's just a vicious cycle. We become dizzy, the dizziness causes stress, the stress makes the dizziness worse than dizziness creates even more stress, the more stress makes the dizziness even worse, and so on and so forth. The brain gets very preoccupied with it all, we can become anxious with it all as well, and in essence the brain isn't able to cope with trying to sort the puzzle out of what it's been thrown at, so we get this mismatch of information, things like this, and the brain can't cope with it, so that confusion or dizziness increases and things just go downhill from there. So we need to turn that around, and thankfully we can. One of the most practical and easiest ways, and a lot of my clients find this extremely useful, is controlled breathing. What we actually do when we say diaphragmatic breathing, so when I say that, is that your tummy and your stomach pops out when you breathe in. So you've got to imagine getting the breath all the way down to the bottom of your lungs. Your stomach will come out, and what that does, it stimulates the vagus nerve. Now that sends signals back up into the brain and things like this, and it starts to settle down that flight or fight response and gets us on an even keel. And we say it to people, oh, look, take a deep breath to settle you down before exams, if people are anxious and things like this. We know it works. People have done it all the time for a long time in different situations and things like this. When we're dizzy, when we're feeling bad and nauseous, sick, it can help as well. It's not always the first thing that springs to mind though. So I appreciate why people don't just think, oh, stop and start deep breathing. It's not as easy as that. But that's why we've got to try and practice it even when we're not feeling bad, so then if we do become dizzy, it can help us. Very simple technique, and there's many out there, and it's not to say that any right or wrong. You find ones that work for yourself. the key component of it is that you're doing diaphragmatic breathing, so your stomach is rising. Putting your hand on there at first and watching your hands rise up on your stomach around your belly button is a good way at first. So it's not from your chest, it's from lower down, and that really stimulates and gets the nerve going. This is a very simple one, so you do it lying or sitting at first until you get comfortable with it, but then once you've practiced it and get used to it, you can do it walking around absolutely fine. And you're basically trying to get your breathing rate down to around 6 breaths a minute with this technique. So 4 seconds to breathe in, you have a good pause, 4 seconds to breathe out, 4 to 6 seconds to breathe out. Some people can cope with that straight away, some people find that quite hard, so you might work up to that and things like this. And you're trying to do 5 minutes worth every day if we can, and that should give us a good basis to be able to then put it into practice when we do become dizzy. But again, build up to that if you're not used to it or if it's quite hard work, and there's various reasons for that as well, but that gets a bit more complicated. As ever, if you feel really lightheaded with this, or you're starting to make your symptoms worse with this breathing, just stop, let it settle down, just breathe normally, and then try again later to settle things and to practice it and settle things down. It's not one of those things that you have to really push yourself to make things worse. That's not going to help anybody, but it's something to practice and do in your own way. And I say there's many different techniques. This is just a simple example. Relaxation can go hand in hand with the controlled breathing. A lot of people find that relaxing. This is just a way to get the muscles and things to relax. So it's best to do this in a darkened room or a room with no distractions. Close your eyes, get yourself shut off for 5 minutes or so, and do it in sitting or laying down. But make sure you're comfortable, that you've got no tight clothing on you or anything like this. I often explain or recommend to people that you either start from the top, from your head, and work your way down, or you start from the bottom and work your way up. No right or wrong really, I just find it a bit easier to keep things in sequence. And all you're going to do is you're going to kind of start at one end or the other. You're going to really tighten the muscles. We found that if we tighten muscles, they relax better thereafter. So you would tighten them for a good 5 seconds. So for instance, you'd really curl your toes up, or you'd really push your feet down to get your calves tight, and then hold that for 5 seconds, and then you say relax, and just relax it out. And sometimes people do a nice big breath out as well, and then just feel that muscle relax. And you'd work your way up, so you might do your toes, your calves, your quads, your buttocks, your stomach, and things like this, working all the way up to your head, or vice versa. The key is to repeat it so it becomes easier. Some people also stick with aromatherapy. They might have some nice incense going, or different scents, or things like this that they find relaxing as well. And other people will do the nice relaxation music or sounds and things like this, the sounds of sea or rainfall and things like this. But equally, always remember, what's nice and relaxing to one person might not be to somebody else. So the sea waves, some people might start to associate that with being seasick. So choose something that helps for you. Try and find something. There's many suggestions out there, but find something that works for you if you're going to use anything extra. Longer term techniques, just generally to reduce stresses in life, so looking at different things, planning our days, having diaries, things like this, writing things down rather than keeping in our heads, trying to solve through different problems, things like this. Life is stressful, it's as simple as that. Trying to minimize it or reduce it is the best way. Time management is a big one. And then we've got to, as I say, life is stressful, so sometimes we're not going to avoid stress, but can we look at it in a different way? Can we start to turn how it affects us around a little bit? So sometimes seeing counsellors or things like that, or trying some different techniques, it can be very useful and important. Support groups can help with that as well. Often they've been there, done that, or they're going through a similar thing, so you can brainstorm on what might be a good way, things like this. And sometimes just knowing that you're not alone is quite useful and quite helpful. And then the bigger thing is vestibular rehabilitation. If we've got a visual vertigo or movement sensitivity, things like this, then going to see someone, getting some exercise, getting some help with it tailored to us rather than just throwing the kitchen sink at it, is a key thing to help in the longer term. So I hope that's been useful. as ever, there's more information on the website dizziness.therapy.co.uk, or you're more than welcome to send me an email, and I'll try and help at info@dizziness.therapy.co.uk. A couple of great organisations out there is the Vestibular Disorders Association, VIDA, vestibular.org from the States, excellent resources and help out there, and the Meniere's Society, menieres.org.uk, a great place as well. Thank you very much for listening. Take care.